Let's jump right into today's explainer because we are tackling a massive, incredibly stubborn myth about human history. For decades, we've all kind of just accepted this collective image of our ancient ancestors living these short, brutal lives. Lives that basically ended right when they should have been figuring adulthood out. Well, today, we're digging into the source material to show you why that narrative is, frankly, totally wrong. It's all about the story we've been told versus the story the bones actually tell. It really comes down to one fundamental question that shifts our entire perspective. Did ancient humans actually drop dead at 30? I want you to hold on to that question. Treat it like a mystery box. We're going to pry it open together, and honestly, what's inside completely changes the story of who we are, where we came from, and what the human body was literally built to do. So let's set the scene. Imagine stepping into a time machine and zipping, say, 20,000 years into the past. The doors open, you step out into a prehistoric camp. Now, based on everything you've probably been taught, you'd expect to walk into a world entirely run by teenagers and 20-somethings, right? You'd look around for the elders, but you just assume anyone over 30 was already gone, just tragic victims of a harsh, unforgiving world. But then, archaeologists dig into the earth and pull up a skeleton that completely shatters that expectation. They uncover the remains of someone who lived into deep, deep old age. We're talking wrinkled, calcified joints, heavily worn down teeth, bones that spent decades upon decades carrying a human body across some seriously rough terrain. This wasn't some teenager who took a bad step on their first hunt. This was a surprisingly old person, like a 70-year-old person. So where does that leave the number 30? You know, the life expectancy we've all seen in textbooks, documentaries, pop culture. It is so completely misunderstood. We hear average life expectancy of 30, and our brains immediately picture a tribe where everyone just magically hits their expiration date on their 30th birthday. But life expectancy, it isn't a speed limit on human biology. It's just an average. Let's actually look at the stark math behind the statistical illusion. Imagine a starting population of 100 ancient babies. Tragically, 50 of them don't make it. They die before reaching age 5. But the other 50, they survive, and they go on to live to be 70 years old. If you average those numbers out, boom, the life expectancy drops to around 35. See, it wasn't an inability to grow old that dragged that number down. It was the staggering, heartbreaking rate of childhood mortality. We really have to wrap our heads around what childhood actually meant back then. I like to call these the ancient danger years. Just think about the sheer terrifying vulnerability. No hospitals, no incubators, zero vaccines, no antibiotics, no artificially purified drinking water. Today, if a kid gets a fever or a cut or a bad stomach bug, modern medicine clears it up in a few days. 20,000 years ago, a simple stomach bug was an absolute life-threatening crisis. Just surviving your first 5 years was, without exaggeration, one of the greatest challenges a human being could face. Because of those intense dangers, simply reaching adulthood wasn't a given. It was an extraordinary achievement. If an ancient human somehow navigated the absolute minefield of early childhood and made it to 15 or 20, well, something remarkable happened. Their statistical chances of living into their 60s or 70s shot way up. They had already passed the ultimate test. But hey, let's be clear, adulthood was still incredibly dangerous. Imagine breaking your leg 20,000 years ago. The hurdles are basically impossible. You can't hunt, you can't gather food, you definitely can't travel. To keep up with a nomadic tribe in the wild, surrounded by predators and freezing winters, a crushed arm or a broken femur mathematically should be an absolute death sentence. You would, by all logic, just perish. And yet, archaeologists routinely find ancient skeletons with severe, crippling injuries that have completely healed. Think about that for a second. How is that even possible? It tells this incredible, beautiful story. Someone helped them, right? Someone carried their food. Someone protected them from predators. Someone waited for them to heal. These healed bones are literal proof that our ancestors didn't just survive because they were individually tough. They survived because they cared for each other. And that spirit of cooperation brings us right back to our prehistoric camp. Picture an elderly woman sitting by the fire at sunset. Her hair is totally gray. Her movements are a lot slower than the young adults prepping the meat and plants. She obviously doesn't have the stamina to join the hunt anymore. But when she speaks, the entire camp goes dead silent, and they listen. Why? Because she remembers where the water is during a devastating drought. She knows exactly which berries will cure a sickness and which ones will absolutely kill you. This brilliantly illustrates this fascinating concept in anthropology called the grandmother hypothesis. Basically, it's the theory that older adults played an absolutely crucial role in human evolution. I mean, think about a young mother trying to forage for food while wrestling two toddlers. It's nearly impossible. But if her mother, the grandmother, is there to watch the kids, share her lifelong knowledge, and help gather plants, those children survive. Generation after generation, families with helpful grandparents simply out-survived the ones without them. You can see this dynamic perfectly if we look at a tale of two hunters. Picture a 20-year-old, fast, strong, totally fearless. Now, compare him to a 60-year-old hunter. Yeah, the older guy is undeniably slower and physically weaker, but he remembers every single treacherous river crossing, every dangerous animal migration route, and every brutal season of famine. In the prehistoric world, raw physical strength was great, for sure. But applied experience, that often meant the difference between life and death. The older hunter simply makes fewer fatal mistakes. I want you to think about this quote for a second. Human memory was civilization. Let that sink in. Before there were books, before written language, long before you could just pull out your phone to Google an answer, the oldest members of the tribe were living, breathing libraries. Everything, from making fire to crafting stone tools to tracking animals, passed directly from their minds right into the minds of the next generation. Just imagine losing every single person over the age of 50 overnight. Thousands of years of carefully accumulated survival experience would literally vanish into thin air. The tribe would become instantly weaker, and the next generation would be forced to repeat all the deadly mistakes of the past. Older adults weren't just passively surviving longer, they were actively protecting the very future of humanity. Now, of course, a lot of adults still didn't make it to old age, but the culprit wasn't always some cinematic, dramatic encounter with a cave lion or a pack of wolves. Actually, a lot of times, it was an invisible enemy. A broken tooth, a simple, stupid cut on the hand while making a stone tool. Today, you wash a cut, slap a Band-Aid on it, and you're good. Back then, they had no idea bacteria even existed. A minor infection could quietly spread through the bloodstream over a few days and become totally fatal. And this brings us to a really core realization. Imagine two genetically identical babies. One is born 20,000 years ago, the other is born today. They have the exact same biology, the same heart, the same lungs, the same brain. But the first baby faces a world of predators, disease, and starvation, where life is just a constant, high-stakes gamble. The second gets vaccines, clean water, emergency medicine, basically countless second chances. Humanity's biology didn't magically evolve to let us live longer. It's our opportunity that evolved. So it's absolutely vital that we don't look back at ancient humans as these fragile creatures trapped inside weak bodies. They were incredibly tough, remarkably resilient people living inside a deeply, deeply unforgiving world. They inhabited a reality where every single winter mattered, where every successful hunt mattered, where just surviving a childhood fever was a monumental, celebrate around the fire kind of victory. When archaeologists pull a 70-year-old skeleton out of the dirt, they aren't finding some freak exception to the rule. They are finding undeniable proof of what the human body was always perfectly capable of, provided it could just somehow avoid the fatal accidents and infections of the ancient world. The human body hasn't changed, guys. The world has. Which leaves us with this final, incredibly profound thought to end today's explainer on. Growing old isn't a modern invention. It's an ancient capability. But doing it safely and in large numbers, that is a uniquely modern privilege. We now get to enjoy the very opportunity that our ancestors spent thousands of generations fighting tooth and nail for. So, the ultimate question is, what will you do with the opportunity to grow old?